Hello, I have some time to record another video on this game of GD40, Großdeutschland 1940. It is the beginning of the 820 turn, so we started at 0400, so you can see I've had quite a few turns. We had some reinforcements at 600. We had air power coming in at 0500, and at 0800 we had a withdrawal. So at 0600 we had I think it's called the 6 GRDI unit, which is essentially 4 units of motorcycle troops. Here they are in move mode, and then 6 or 7 armoured cars. So it's a reconnaissance battalion. It comes on here, and it had at start orders to make harassing, kind of like a harassing reconnaissance up, all the way up to, oops, sorry, getting stuck. I've got a stand, my stands get stuck. So going up to village there, and then coming back down to this village here. The idea is essentially that they're to harass the Germans, to delay their op sheets implementing, and also to provide any spotting opportunities for artillery and or mortar fire, and even for aircraft sorties. They've already taken quite a few hits, so 3 armoured cars have gone down. You can see here I've got, these are the original company morale sheets, but now the rules, they've moved to battalion morale, so I had to put these, but I really like the colour, so I just kind of laid them over the top of these. It looks a bit jazzy, but so they've got 2 morale points, and any more hits they'll start getting more morale points. So we had an hourly turn. They tried to reduce that, but if on another hit I roll, I have to roll for the morale, they might withdraw if I roll a 1 or 2 on a d6. So they're looking a bit shaky already, and you can see these troops here are surrounded. So this is but it's interesting because this is the thing that happens in with the use of the ops sheets. So their mission was, as I said, to move up and sort of go up here and then down here. The motorcycle troops were a lot slower than the armoured cars. The armoured cars decided to whiz forwards and let the motorcycle troops sort of lag behind and catch up as necessary. But in the meantime, these units, they are Pioneer, the Sturm Pioneer Battalion. They have implemented preliminary instructions to head, because the attack on Ston has basically been successful, so they implemented preliminary instructions on the op sheet, the next op sheet, which will have them taking up defensive positions here. So they're actually unassigned, the Sturm Pioneers, but they sort of boldly move forwards because they couldn't see those motorcycle units into the woods, have come in contact and then have to stop. And because they're unassigned, they cannot fire suppressive fire actions. They can only fire in response to fire on them. So they basically kind of hold themselves back. So there's a kind of like Mexican standoff there. And originally, the German tank unit was in these woods too, on this side. So they were kind of surrounded, but the tank units have been recalled to an operation further off the map. So they have a chance to move out. But then a similar, so they hadn't actually given any fires. They lost some units to artillery fires because these ones, they're also implementing preliminary instructions moving across here, so their defence area will be here. So unbeknownst to that, these armoured cars are kind of hovering there. They wanted to get here, but it was being overwatched by a Stug 3 here. So they've kind of been hovering in the woods. They want to hover in full woods hexes rather than roads woods hexes generally. They're on the road at the moment because it makes them harder to spot from aircraft sorties. And then the lead unit of these came across, spotted them, moved back a hex, and then these had to all hold up because, again, they're unassigned, cannot move towards a known enemy unit. So it's really interesting, that kind of thing. And I've noticed in playing this game, I've had several moments where, for example, I had units moving down here, and then the armoured cars were moving across here, and I moved some units out. I thought, oh, we must quickly move out here so we can get in line of sight and shoot at them. And I made the move, and then I had to take it back, thinking, no, because their orders are to move around along here. Their axis of advance was like that, so they would not have strayed out. So, I as the player could see, and even those units, some of them could actually spot the armoured cars, but their operations instructions were to move along here, and they hadn't been given any ability to move outside. I mean, there were some units in reserve, but they were too far back, and even then to implement a reserve roll would have happened the next turn. Meanwhile, the armoured cars may well have zipped away. So that's wonderful, the way this game plays out, that kind of real fog of war kind of moments. Enemies passing in the night, and you can't, at this level at least, you can't just drop your whole battalion orders and wander off and do something else, especially because you might not be absolutely certain, are they ours or theirs, that kind of thing. So I've had a few great moments like that. I'll just show you the situation at the moment. These ones are also under preliminary instructions now to move into their actually a preparatory position for their next op sheet, which will be like a spoiling attack in this direction. That's a stray unit from them which had to hide. You see a company, 2 platoons out of this company. This platoon's only got 1 strength point left. It's almost wiped out, which was pretty obvious it was going to happen because it was over there, along with 4 of those blocking machine gun units from the same company. But the rest of the battalion and the rest of the 4 BCC are here. Yes, so they successfully skulked in the woods and hid from the German tanks until they withdrew, which was the plan. So what can I say? So at the moment we've had 3 ops sheets have implemented. This was the French start plan, which was basically a withdrawal. So that was has been deemed a success. So now, as I said, they've gone into preliminary instructions for their next op sheet. Then the German attack has been declared a success, and all of these units, all of the German units on the board now are on preliminary instructions to go into offensive positions. The problem is, as I said earlier, so the Stern Pioneers are going towards here. They've got some enemy units in that position. The same's happening up here, so there, and then the same's happening down here because the 2nd battalion, which is moving along here from here, is supposed to go into defensive position here. But there's known enemy units there. They know they're in the woods. They don't know exactly where they are because there were some on the tree line before. They don't know the strength, although we as the player can see it. But anyway, so there's a quandary here because their orders are to assemble here and then assume a dug-in position. Their orders are to assemble here at 0900, which is in 3 turns. Some reinforcements come here to assemble exactly where the Großdeutschland's 2nd battalion is supposed to be. So I think what's actually going to happen is that at the beginning of this turn they're going to declare their operation failure, in which case they'll have to undertake their failure instructions, which is to move to this village or town here. Now that's very unfortunate because it's far, far away, and in fact what I've noticed I should do, so what I should have done is they've been accruing, although I put this all on one op sheet, it's actually 4 separate operations. I just did it. I think it's for saves paper and also shuffling through paper. I think I'm going to start breaking out in separate op sheets now. They're definitely, because people are doing different things. They were all doing the same thing essentially. So they were all accruing weighted turns at varying speeds because of actions by or against them, and I should have sort of thought about this earlier and issued them an alternative op sheet. So scratch them off this unimplemented op sheet, put them on a new unimplemented op sheet whilst they were still on implementing that op sheet. So I'm going to have to so then they wouldn't. Then that op sheet might have implemented before they had to decide to, or just after deciding to fail. Well, no, then they wouldn't have been performing that. But anyway, the point is they're going to have to decide failure, or they're going to have to sort of wait there and pause in their implementation and hope that as unassigned units, they would be unassigned as failed, but at least they'd be kind of in a safe spot. Otherwise, they're going to sort of sit here in harm's way, waiting to accrue on an alternative order. The trouble is, although they'll be safe there, I actually want concentration of force. Everyone's supposed to be concentrated in this area. There's a few options of a bit further back, but we didn't really want people to exercise their failure instructions except in disasters, because that would sends everyone up here. So the Germans are lacking some forethought and an extra op sheet there, which is quite understandable, from the weight of all the op sheets and operations that I have to think about. But that that's the way it goes. Then this is a German op sheet which was actually declared a failure because it was a search and destroy mission by the German tank battalion. So that they'd moved in here in the original attack orders. They quickly, because the vehicles gain weighted turns very quickly, so they very quickly were able to implement a new mission once it was apparent that the French were just withdrawing out. So their mission was to search and destroy, so essentially use them before you lose them, because before they withdrew, the idea was to try and take as many French tanks as they can. Essentially, they headed towards here, and the French were were kind of covering the whole woods line like that, and they lost some tanks, lots of tanks. So they're on their second round of their battalion morale. They probably would have entered failure instructions before long. So they declared it a failure because essentially the problem was the French tanks were in the woods, and they were trying to trade shots with them, and the French sort of on average are better than the German tanks. So they declared a failure and started moving back here, which was their rally point, and then they were withdrawn anyway. So that's a German successful mission and a failed mission. And on the French side, we also declared a success. So that was their original withdrawal. That was declared a success. And as I said, they're all accruing preliminary instructions. Here's the harass operation, which is axis mignon to objective Fritte, then on to objective Café, and then there was an alternative axis polio into croissant, and then on to Café, but that was heavy with Germans, so they took this route around. So that's in action at the moment. Here is the next French operation. So it's debilate. So it's the idea is debilitating a spoiling attack in this direction, and then here, and then coming back round here. Oh yeah, I think I have to revise that, don't I? Because I was thinking I had to draw there an option to head up there. So essentially, it's another kind of like hunting mission. They want to make a sweep, take out some German units because they're going to be in a massed force. They don't want to hit Ston. The idea is to circle around Ston, because that's obviously going to be, the thought is that by this point it's going to be well defended, and in fact it is. So hopefully they're going to take out some periphery defenders then come back. Then they need to come back here in preparation for the eventual main attack. Now, so some of the units, they have as they come on, that's already implemented. The other units that are on map are gaining weighted turns towards that. Then this next op sheet, because units can only be on 2 op sheets, 1 implemented, 1 unimplemented, or 2 unimplemented at once, that means that I'm going to have to add the ones that are originally on here once they're only on 1 op sheet. So there's some playing to do. And then the final one is the holding position, a hasty defense. So there's just one person accruing weighted, one sort of section accruing weighted turns for that. So we got Mignon Fritter in operation, and they are assembling in preparation for this. Attack up axis Bouillon into Boeuf, which is again that point here. So it's sweeping round. Continuing on via axis Risotto to Salate, that's another village here, and coming back via Escargot, with the alternative of heading up via Trifle to an unnamed objective up there. So that is the state of play at the moment. I'm not sure what else I should say, except that I'm really enjoying it. It's taking sort of half an hour when there's not really much firing to do a turn, because there's the command phase in which I have to go through all the op sheets accruing weighted turns, considering if any units are going to enter or come out of reserve, which is in fact what happened for a number of them previously. Considering what units might have to, if an op sheet's scrapped, do I move those units onto a new op sheet? Are they going to remain unassigned without an op sheet, etc.? Which you don't really want to happen. Then checking battalion morale. Then we go to the aircraft and artillery phase. So there's not much sorties. So the aircrafts haven't done much. I think one took out a tank. I can't remember which side. Generally they've been suppressing when the sorties are effective. So the aircraft sorties we're finding are good for harassing, because nobody's wanting to stick out in the open really, or else they will be easily spotted and targeted. 3 or 4 turns out of how many have we done? Something like 10 turns. There's been no sorties at all. And then we move on to the artillery. Artillery is progressing fine. Again, they're both sides are conserving their artillery, not using it too much because everyone's hiding. The French have used 6 out of 13 HE rounds, none of their smoke. The German have used 7 out of 10 HE rounds and none of their smoke. So I think the Germans didn't need a heavy attack. They were just sort of mopping up and delayed by French defenders. Oh, and that was very interesting. The fact that I had one company with 4 machine gun sections, so reinforced company, spread out over here. It held up something like 3 or 4 battalions of advancing forces, and it is very interesting to see how effective that can be. It didn't hold them up so much as delayed them. So because you can fire Overwatch fire as many times as someone moves, and as long as people are moving through the open or moving around you, you can cause a lot of harassment that way. And the point is that there's a lot of open space here, and obviously these open spaces here, so delaying units in these woods meant they could cover that space, which slowed down, because don't forget that the units have to choose if they go from change modes from fire to move, they lose movement points and so forth. So by keeping people sort of hiding in between turns, so that every turn they have to re-switch back into move mode, then go into cover, then next turn come out of cover, run, go back into cover at the end. It slowed the whole advance down, and of course because the cover channels were quite small, they could also just sit in those cover channels and shoot at anyone who came adjacent to them. But they paid the price, but they did their job beautifully. Gave the French a chance. They completely reorganised and succeeded at their first op sheet. So I think I'm just kind of like blabbering on now. Just one thing to say, it's always interesting, but I find whenever games give you the play aids, I always find they never put enough on them. And so I always find I add my own additions to it. And it's interesting because I think the point of view is they want a play aid to look nice and attractive. And many people, I guess, would say, they would look at a really busy play aid and say, ugh, why didn't they organise that better? But which would essentially have meant 2 more play aids or leave a lot of information off. I'm all for put the information on. You can see here, like just little hints, because every mode's different, every game's different. What happens with modes? What happens with fire mode, move mode? What does a fire marker mean? What happens when you're suppressed? What differences are there then? So yes, but I find it as a solo player, part of the fun of the game is just that. I think it's the kind of thing which, when you're like a miniatures player, when you're choosing your army list, painting up your soldiers, and that's part of the fun of the game and a relaxing thing. And I find it relaxing just organising and preparing for these kind of games, which I think is one of the reasons why I find this game so delicious, because that op sheet is a lot of paper preparation, and it's a very sort of satisfying, relaxing thing to do. It adds a whole new dimension to wargaming. It's kind of like a game within a game. It's kind of like it's like one of those Matrix games, or a bit more of a role playing game. It's you are the commander. Show us what you're going to do. It's has a very different feel from adjusting cardboard chits in hexes. It's more of a broad sweep kind of free-form approach combined with the actual movement, and I find that combination absolutely wonderful. But like I say, yes, it could take up to an hour for a turn. It's taken me with this amount of forces. Half an hour is the kind of on average at the moment. And I think that they're going to go quite quickly now, maybe even quicker than that, because the Germans, I had to again organise a little plan, write down where everyone's going to go, because you've got 2 or 3 battalions in this one space with a lot of support weapons, and you want to get them in a good position for the inevitable attack. So again, that's that kind of game within a game thing, the planning of... I had to pause the action to prepare that, something which isn't so easy to do in a face-to-face game. Okay, so now I think I've got time to play a turn now, so I'll do that and maybe give you a quick update after that. Okay, I've prepared a quick op sheet for the 2nd Battalion. It's quite simple, so it's the time at the beginning of the 8:20 turn. It will be a hasty defence. The size is 0 because the whole battalion's there, including some attached 37mm with 4 truck steps to carry them. Actually, I think it's 3 truck steps. It just shows the position, which essentially is the positions, this area which they're in now. So you don't need any access to get there. The written notes cover the flank of Ston, so that's kind of their mission. And the failure instructions to move to that point there via these woods, so not to move out in the open, to sort of retreat up that way if need be. So they will gain weighted turns at the cost of 2 a minute at the moment, unless they get fired on, which will be 1 a minute. No, they're unassigned, so they can have them at 3 a minute, 3 a turn. So within 2 turns at the moment, they will have a 6. They will obtain those on 6 and 3 on the 2 dice. Within 3 turns, that will go to improve to 55. So they're depends what the French do. If they get, they're probably going to be well, they might be interdicted with artillery fire, which might mean it's not going to happen before they get impacted. But anyway, they do have failure instructions. But those won't come into effect until it's implemented, or they get into preliminary instructions on it, which could happen a few turns earlier. So otherwise, they are still on failure instructions to Bisache. So yeah, I've decided to do a couple of like this with on the laminated. I mean, it's in these sleeves, so I can pull them in and out, because this might get scrapped quite quickly. I thought I could also plan sheets, so I've got a couple like that, just to plan them quickly on lamination. And then if they're sort of satisfactory and they become implemented before being scrapped, I can put them on a paper sheet, just to sort of try and reduce the paper trail, really. Because otherwise I'll get lost in the numbers of sheets flipping through, and obviously this will save some time. Okay, that's interesting. The French had no air sorties, so the French are sticking to their plans. They haven't written up any new ones. The Germans had 4 air sorties, which had no effect. They spotted all of them because they got spotters and so forth, but it was no effect. Now, the Germans using the spotter here have called up some artillery on this hex. Well, they were thinking of calling up artillery on this hex, and because he's higher, it wouldn't have been, although he's a long way away, it wouldn't have been too bad an artillery adjustment. But because these units are unassigned at the moment, they rolled for implementation of their prepared defence, didn't get it. So that these units are unassigned on their preliminary instructions, which is a -2 column shift on the artillery adjustment. So it's interesting if your units are kind of still bungling around, you have extra effects like that, so they're not going to risk that. It'll probably be a bad shot and wasted. So the Germans obtained initiative, which means these units in the 3rd Battalion, and a bit of a quandary, they cannot move, as they're unassigned under preliminary instructions, they cannot move into this area, because I mean, strictly speaking, according to rules, I think I could move them all up until each unit individually had spotted that. But under kind of like the spirit of it, I believe, they know that that's there now. So, I mean, they could move cautiously, continue, I suppose. My other option, I'm thinking, is that they could declare that before it's even started, really. They can move towards the rally point. Well, they can even move away from their new rally point, which is up here. So I'm thinking what I might do is have them move around here, so that they're at least sort of not on the other side of this open area. It's a bit tricky. It's interesting. Unassigned units, I'm trying to move into an area with enemy in it. Create some nice quandaries. Sorry, I didn't realise I was recording then. So these guys have gone for discretion rather than valor. They're kind of like hanging tough there. They've moved their truck up there, has to stay in move mode at the moment. Because if they got there, okay, they're kind of like disrupting the French communications, but essentially they would be caught in a wedge. They could get easily obliterated, cut off from support of their other units. So they're essentially waiting for their instructions to move back around here. I reviewed what I had done here, and I realised that these unassigned units I had moved up within adjacent to some of these which wouldn't have been allowed, seeing as because of their spotting and being unassigned. So I put them 2 hexes away. There's 1 inching around here to try and get around them. So those ones are in the clear to move off, or they might want to sit there and just at least leave 1 unit there just to, stop these guys from effectively organising themselves, because they're waiting to go into prepared defensive positions. They don't want to dig in like that. They want to create a nice little hedgehog reserve. I think they'll be put into reserve at some point. But anyway, they want that's a good point, because once you're in prepared, reserve units cannot be in prepared defence. Well, I put that they're in prepared defence, that they're opsheeted to go into prepared defence. I think what I'll then do is, once they're in that, prepare an opsheet for them in which I could quickly take them off, put them in unassigned, in which case they would move out of their prepared defensive positions. Anyway, I can think about that in a bit. It's all a bit moot at the moment because of these guys. So these ones are all set up. They're sort of getting ready to dig in. They're not ready to dig in yet, and that's all the Germans have on the board at the moment. That is the bulk of their forces now. They're only going to get 1 more reinforcement. The French are going to get 1 very soon. So the French player, I think, within the spirit of their mission, which is harassing and spotting, they've moved 1 armoured car to the edge of the woods there to spot against these. These ones moved up so they're off the trail, so they're quite hidden from sorties. And so, they're sort of slowing them down. And I think within the spirit, although their objectives up there and then they would be joining these, their overall mission is harassment. So they have moved into slightly better positions and come out of move mode to continue doing what they were doing. These ones are staying here because they're all organised, ready to go into their next operation. Oh, and I just have to move this fellow. He's essentially moving around at the hill there. He's only 1 step, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's not expecting artillery to be wasted upon him, and that's fair enough. He's just trying to get back to join his mates. So that's the end of that turn. We'll now move to the 840 turn, and I think I'll post this up